Welcome back to the Law and Crime Network, and we're going to get right to it. Our own Jesse Weber was in the courtroom, and Harvey Weinstein for the openings of both the prosecution and the defense. Jesse, tell us what the prosecution said first.
Hey, Linda. Yeah, what an incredible morning. I should first let you know that it came as a surprise today when I saw Harvey Weinstein coming into the courtroom without his walker. He was stumbling a little bit. He was actually on Judah Engelmeyer and Arthur Idala, appeared to be stumbling at one point, and that's just how the morning started. But yes, we saw a very, very powerful and compelling opening statement by the prosecution that was delivered by Megan Hast, who's one of the attorneys on this matter. And it was really a very disturbing account of what Harvey Weinstein allegedly did over the course of these years. And the pattern that she portrayed was going through a timeline of Harvey Weinstein starting early on in the industry and making his way as a more powerful titan, which is one of the words that she used. And throughout the years, he had a similar pattern of ultimately preying on women who needed help in the industry, who turned to him, and he abused that relationship. And I got to tell you, the details that were laid out were so really horrific to hear about and so detail-oriented that at some points people in the audience just had to take audible moments to collect themselves. We heard also from the unnamed complaining witness. She was identified as Jessica Mann, who was an aspiring actress at the time. She is one of the controversial witnesses, as we'll talk about a little bit later, in the sense that the defense has said that she had a loving relationship with Harvey Weinstein. But the prosecution first laid it out with Annabella Shora, an acclaimed actress who many people have known for her films and TV shows. She was also in Copland. And basically the tale there was from the 90s and how Harvey Weinstein barged his way into her apartment and sexually assaulted her. It moved then on to the next woman in question, of course, Mimi Halle, who is one of the alleged victims in this case that is the basis of several of those charges, how she was trying to work in production, how Harvey Weinstein met her and ultimately forced himself upon her. You'll remember that criminal sex act is related to her, that he forced oral sex upon her. The conversation then moved to Jessica Mann, who, as I said, was that unnamed complaining witness. And then we learned the story there. Really horrific account of how he allegedly sexually abused her, including at the Peninsula Hotel. After she had claimed she had a boyfriend, he physically assaulted her and claimed that this is one last time after an ongoing sexual assault history. We finally learned the names and stories of the 3 Molyneux witnesses, and those tales were equally as disturbing, whether it was from Harvey Weinstein masturbating in front of one of them, to him trying to get a threesome out of another one, and then also sexually assaulting a third. As you recall, those 3 Molyneux witnesses are being called to show a pattern, to show that this is not a mistake, a common scheme. And that was what we heard from the prosecution after about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours from an opening from then. Then we heard from the defense a first half for them, which was equally as compelling, Linda.
So tell me what the defense said in response to that, what apparently was an incredible moment or moments in the courtroom where people's jaws dropped.
Right. Damon Sharonis, who delivered the opening for the defense, basically said, here's the problem, jury. Everything that you heard from the state, their narrative doesn't hold water. It's not true. And what he started to detail before we were cut off for the lunch break, as he went through the stories of Mimi Halle as well as Jessica Mann and tried to say that could it not be that Harvey Weinstein was the one who was being manipulated, that he was a powerful man in the industry with a lot of resources, and these women took advantage of that, and that this was not a case of him abusing anybody, but that really this was a loving relationship. Some of the emails were brought into a conversation here about how they continued to stay in contact with him. They exchanged nice pleasantries with him. Jessica Mann allegedly kept trying to stay in contact with him, was always the first one to reach out. And even in one point, she said in one of the emails, allegedly, "I love you, I've always loved you." Now, that is something that might be very difficult for the prosecution because the defense said it doesn't fit into their narrative. These people are human beings. And that is something, that first part of the defense's opening, which was pretty much of a shock. We heard inklings of what these emails might be. We heard inklings of where the defense was going. But to hear them say and hear them articulate, the jury, that what these witnesses are saying is not true. And one of the big parts that Damon Sharonis wanted to stress is that their stories kept on changing. that their stories kept on changing to make it worse for Harvey Weinstein, that we have to go back to when these incidents happened back in the early 2000s or even 2013 it's very different than where we stand at the Harvey Weinstein of 2020. So I have to say, really, really incredible openings from both sides, and I can't wait to see where the defense goes in the second half of their opening statement.
Now, the judges allowed what you mentioned, the Molyneux witnesses. That's the pattern and practice to try to show Harvey Weinstein is a sexual predator and increase the penalty against him. Is the judge going to require the jury hear the actual complaining witnesses, Mimi Haley, and the new identifying witness who was complaining witness one, Jessica Mann? Are they going to require the prosecution to put them on first and only then after that put on the Molyneux witnesses, or is this kind of a free-for-all?
Linda, that's a great question. Based upon what we heard in court, we're not sure which way the schedules go. It could be a situation where if one of the witnesses is available on one day and not the other, maybe that's what we'd hear. However, based upon how the prosecution structured their case, you would imagine that we would hear from the two complaining witnesses first, possibly then Annabelle Shore, followed by the three Molyneux witnesses. That would be the way based upon how they structured their argument and their narrative. They also might want to do something along the lines of telling a complete timeline. Start in the early 90s and make their way all the way up to 2013. That's something that we might see as well. It's all about which witnesses. Also, we can't forget, Linda, it's all a matter of who are the most compelling witnesses, who maybe have the strongest stories. We saw something in the Kellen Winslow case where sometimes the first two Jane Does that testified kind of had stories that were questionable, and it put a question on the rest of the witnesses that were testifying. The prosecution has to be thinking about that, how they're going to structure this. But I got to tell you, these stories are equally as disturbing. It's going to be equally hard for every one of those women to come on the stand and tell their story, especially under cross-examination, where based upon what we heard from the defense, they have some serious questions to answer.
So, Jesse, we know you're going to have a little bit of lunch, get back in that courtroom. I can't wait to discuss with you later on the testimony that the prosecution alluded to and that also Gloria already alluded to, Dr. Barbara Ziv, who testified in the Cosby case. But please, go have lunch, and we will be following this case when Aaron Keller joins you at the courthouse later today for the Daily Debrief, only here at the Law and Crime Network, 5 to 5:30, to discuss the Harvey Weinstein opening statements day. Stay tuned. Stay with us.